A kingdom is only as strong as the man who holds the Ofo staff. But Prince Obiora's legs were as weak as a mosquito's legs. While the king sacrificed white rams to silent gods, a girl named Nkechi lived in the shadows with a spirit mark upon her hands, a sixth finger the village called a curse. Unaware that it was the very key required to unlock the prince's strength before the 20th harvest. In the ancient days, when the kingdom of Orizu was the pride of the sun, there lived a girl named Nkechi. 5 is the number of a finger. 5 fingers to grip the hoe, 5 to hold the shield. But when Nkechi was born, the midwife did not sing. They did not pour the traditional libation of joy. Instead, they looked at the baby girl's hand and pulled their wrappers tight across their chests in fear. On each of her hands sat a tiny, uninvited guest, a sixth finger, perfectly formed, a twin to her pinky. The village elders shook their heads. They whispered that her mother must have looked at a carved mask of the Awu spirit during her pregnancy. They called her Alu, an abomination. As Nkechi grew, she became a ghost in her own village. When she went to the stream, the other girls moved their pots away, fearing that if her extra finger touched the water, their own hands would sprout a sixth finger. The elders looked at her and saw a walking taboo, Alu. They said she was the reason the rains were late or why the yams were small. They mocked her, saying, "Nkechi, with which hand will you serve your husband? For even the gods only have 5 fingers to receive a sacrifice." Nkechi grew up in the shadows. While other girls danced in the village square, she hid her hands in the folds of her wrapper. She became a creature of the forest, befriending the crickets and the spiders. For the earth goddess Allah does not judge the number of legs a creature has, only the weight of its heart. But while Nkechi was mocked for having too much, in the great Obi of the Eze, there was a prince who had too little. It was a sorrow that no flute could soothe. The king's only son, Prince Obiora, was born with legs that were as weak as mosquitoes' legs. He could not walk, he could not stand, and in Orizu, a king must be the pillar of the people. A king who sits while his people stand is a king whose ancestors have turned their backs. He was the only son, the only hope for the Orizu crown. A man who cannot stand cannot hold the Ofo, the sacred staff of justice. If Prince Obiora did not walk by his 20th harvest, the lineage of Orizu would be cut like a dead vine, and the crown would pass to his cruel uncle, Ezenwa, whose heart was a pit of vipers. The king of Orizu, Eze, was a man who had forgotten the taste of sleep. He thought of people's mockery, the shame of past glory. He sent his swiftest messengers to the 4 corners of the earth, to the land of the 7 rivers and the forest of the Smoky Mountains. "Bring me the healers," he bellowed. "I will give half my bands of yam. I will give 100 head of cattle. Only make my son stand." First came the Dibia of the white python. He arrived with a gourd that rattled with the teeth of ancient beasts. He bathed the prince's legs in the juice of crushed uturukpa leaves and bit into a bitter kula, spitting the juice onto the boy's feet. He stayed for 3 moons, chanting songs that made the owls scream at midnight. But when the moon ended, the prince's legs remained as weak as mosquitoes' legs. The Dibia left in the middle of the night, his gourd empty and his pride broken. Then came the woman of the mist from across the great river. She demanded the heart of a lion and the eggs of a parrot that had never seen the sun. She brewed a pot so fragrant the whole village smelt of cinnamon. For 7 days, she massaged the prince's bones with oil from the udala seed. But on the 8th day, When she tried to lift him, the prince fell like a felled banana tree. While the palace was a hive of desperate magic, the village of Orizu continued its cruel rhythm. Nkechi remained the ghost of the marketplace. She had discovered something, however, a secret that sat quietly on her hands. One evening, by the edge of the forest, she found a bird with a broken wing. In her heart, she felt a sudden fierce heat. "I wish you could fly," she whispered. Before the words had even left her lips, the bird's wing snapped into place and it soared into the sky. Nkechi gasped, clutching her hands to her chest. She began to experiment in the shadows. She wished for the widow's leaking roof to be mended, and the next morning the thatch was new. She wishes for her mother's broken pot to be mended, and she came back from the stream to meet a new one. She was a fountain of blessings in a village that called her a curse. But she never wished for herself. She never wished for the sixth finger to vanish, for she began to realize it was not a mark of abomination, but a vessel of the god's own breath. She watched the palace from afar. She saw the healers come and go like shifting winds. She saw the prince being carried to the courtyard, his eyes full of wisdom that only suffering can teach. And she saw the uncle, Ezenwa, standing behind the king, his eyes already measuring the length of the throne, his smile like a trap hidden in tall grass. The 20th harvest was only 3 suns away. For 18 years, the great palace of Orizu became a house of shadows. King Eze did not just sacrifice white rams, he emptied his pens. The blood of bulls flowed into the earth until the soil was dark and sticky. Yet the prince's legs remained as weak as a leg of a mosquito. The years did not wait for the king's tears. The morning of the 20th harvest arrived, the day the sun would decide the fate of Orizu. The village square was packed so tight that a grain of sand dropped from the sky would not hit the ground. The elders sat in a semicircle, their faces grave, their offer staffs held upright. In the center of the square stood the great offer of Orizu, an ancient staff of iron and sacred wood, taller than a man's waist and heavier than 3 mortars. It was buried deep in the ancestral soil. "The time has arrived," the chief priest shouted. "Prince Obiora, son of Malobi, step forward. Take the offer, lift it, walk 3 paces, or let the crown find a new head." In the center of the square stood the great offer of Orizu, an iron staff older than the village itself. It was wedged into the sacred stone, and it was said that only a man with the strength of the soil could lift it. Prince Obiora was carried out on a litter, his eyes sunken. He looked at the offer, and then he looked at the sky. He knew the law. If he did not stand and lift the staff today, his father would be deposed, and his uncle, Ezenwa, would take the throne. The chief priest raised his staff. "Obiora, son of Malobi, the ancestors demand a king who can walk the earth. Step forward." The prince's servant helped him to the stone. He gripped the iron staff. His arms trembled. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He pulled. He groaned. But his legs, those mosquito legs, remained limp. He slid to the ground, his face in the red dust. Ezenwa stepped forward, a triumphant smirk on his thin lips. "The prince is a fallen leaf. I, Ezenwa, will take thee." "Stop!" Nkechi emerged from the crowd. The village went silent. She walked with a dignity that made the guards hesitate. She reached the center of the circle, where no girl was allowed. "What is this?" the chief priest roared. Take this abomination away." "No," the prince said from the dust, his voice weak but clear. "Let her speak." Nkechi knelt beside the prince. She did not use herbs. She did not use potions. She took his cold, trembling hand in hers, her 6 fingers interlocking with his 5. The village watched, horrified, expecting her to infect him with her curse. She leaned close to his ear and spoke, her voice carrying across the silent square like the rustle of leaves. "Obiora," she said, "I am a girl the world calls a mistake. You are a man the world calls a void. But the gods do not make mistakes, and they do not create voids. My wish is simple. I wish that the love I have for this soil and the strength I have had to find in my loneliness becomes the marrow in your bones. I wish for you to arise, not to be a king, but to be the truth." But as Nkechi spoke that wish, a wish born of pure love and a soul that had survived the fire of mockery, the prince felt something he had never felt. It was the strength of a person who had stood alone against the world. Obiora looked into Nkechi's eyes. He saw her 6 fingers, the mark that had made her an outcast, and he realized that her extra was the very thing that made her whole. Slowly, painfully, Prince Obiora's feet began to heal. The square gasped as the prince rose. He did not rise because of magic. He rose because Nkechi's wish had given him a reason to stand. He stood tall. He grabbed the ofo and with one mighty pull, ripped it from the stone. The silence was shattered by a sound like 1,000 voices. "He stands! The prince stands!" Obiora did not look at his uncle. He looked at Nkechi. She was still on her knees, her 6-fingered hand resting in the dust. The village that had mocked her was now bowing. "I did not walk because of a healer's oil," Obiora declared to the people. "I walked because this woman wished it. She, whom you called a curse, is the only one among you who is truly pure. She was born differently so that she could see what we were too blind to see. From this day, she is your queen." And so, the girl who was too much married the man who was too little, and together they made a kingdom that was just right. The 6th finger remained on Nkechi's hand, but the village no longer called it a curse. They called it the finger of the queen's wish, and they say that as long as she lived, no child in Orizu ever went hungry, for the queen knew how to wish for the people she loved. The once mocked girl now became the most cherished treasure of the kingdom. And that brings us to the end of our journey today. I want to say a huge thank you for watching and supporting the channel. If you found this story interesting, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. Your support means the world to me and helps this channel grow every day. I'm curious, what was your favorite part of the story? Let me know below. Until next time, take care of yourself and have a wonderful day.